Hi, this is Paul Casey, the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame Zoom meeting. Today we're going to be talking about master keys and unraveling the mystery as well as exploring Ed Parker's thoughts on this. Is it martial science or is it Kenpo Voodoo? We'll let you decide. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Paul Casey, the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame educational video series. Today, I have with me some really interesting thoughts. And we're going to be talking about the martial science? Are we going to talk about Kenpo Voodoo? It's up to these guys to help me decide what we're doing here. And I'm very honored to have with us Marty Zaninovich. How you doing, Marty? Good to see you.
Good, Paul. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate
All the
it.
way from Florida, Lee Wedlake. Hey, Lee.
How you doing, Paul?
You liked that intro, didn't you?
Yeah, great.
Off the wall. What can I say? I can always cut it. Senior Master of the Arts, Dennis Conatser. How are you, sir, from Arizona?
I'm just muy bueno. ¿Cómo estás?
And our founder, who just is one of my favorite guys, Mr. Todd Durgan. Hello, Todd.
Sir.
Okay, so let's just jump on top of this. The question that was brought up is, what is this all the interest in the master key? And there are several discussions on it. In the master key, you have the master key basic or basics, master key movements or movements, as it says here, master key techniques. And the definitions derive from the early 80s. Am I correct on that, Lee?
That's correct.
Why don't you walk us through a little of that?
Well, if you got the original accumulative journal that was published in 1970, there's terminology that would go with all the ranks from yellow belt up to green belt. And there's no definition of the master keys in that. Now, I started working directly with Mr. Parker in the late 70s. And when we talked about it, it was oral transmission. He says, a master key movement is a technique that works for 3 or more attacks without being changed. Now that definition doesn't make it into print. So by 1982, in volume 1 of the Infinite Insight series, he comes up with the first definition in print that says it's a single move used in 1 or more predicaments equally. Now, by 1987, in volume 5 of Infinite Insights, this has changed. Now it's a move or series of moves that can be used in more than 1 predicament. Now, when you read a definition, you need to look at the definition itself and look at the words within it. And I remember being on the plane to Australia in 1987 with Parker, Skip Hancock, and a bunch of other people. And it's a very long ride. And Skip was working with Mr. Parker, and the 3 of us were kind of huddled up in one row of seats there talking about these things. And that's when he was coming up with the definition of what a move was, which is what you see later in the encyclopedia. So you've got those printed definitions, but that's the genesis of those.
Was that the trip to Jersey?
No,
Australia.
Australia.
Down under.
Were you on that trip, Dennis?
I was on one with Frank and Lee.
You were on the 1980.
It was the
86 trip. 87 trip is when you came over with us.
Yeah.
Dennis, are you performing voodoo? Because you got hands inside out disappearing and weird stuff going on here. Marty, Your thoughts?
My thoughts are a little bit different because they came from Mr. Planis. And when we talk about a master key, we never had that terminology when I started with them. But it evolved, and our interpretation of it is a technique that'll work on the opposite side with little to no change. A technique meaning 3 movements or more. A lot of times we consider a move several movements within the technique. So that's where we're going, you know, for our analogy on that. And like master keys, from like, you know, I've been taught, doesn't mean it's going to be the do all be all, is anything can be called a master key, whether you call it the equation formula, that could be a key to the system. There's a lot of things that can be classified at it. But as for our understanding of it and application, we generally go with that, what I stated at first.
Todd, your analysis on that.
Yeah, so I love the genesis of it that Mr. Wedlake shared. That was awesome. I think that it's sometimes an overused term, but sometimes very relevant. I use the master key idea or terminology for the universal pattern to define the first 3 planes in the universal pattern, because they are truly the master key planes. They are the base from which all of the other planes come from. I know I've seen Mr. Conatser's list of master key techniques and so on. I'm sure he'll get into that. I look at that and I struggle with some of those techniques to find relevance to the base technique, but certainly there is validity with the use of the terminology. I prefer to follow Mr. Wedlake's use of that, and certainly because he's given me now the genesis of that terminology, which is awesome. And the you know, more of the definitions that Mr. Parker gave in the Infinite Insights and Encyclopedia.
Let's go to Dennis here. Dennis, help us to understand this concept of master key. Where did Mr. Parker come up with that?
I disagree with Lee and such with the genesis of that. The basic the origin actually came from involving actually more of Skip. Skip had a thing when he first came to Mr. Parker, and he wanted to know more about the concepts and principles. So Mr. Parker gave him a project, which was to take all the techniques, start with a yellow and go on and itemize move by move what principle or concept took place. For example, the first move, a delayed sword, the inward strike, the second move, the kick, the third move, the chop. And so each one of those moves has many different principles or concepts within each particular move. Well, out of that, if you look to the latest version of the what everybody refers to as the Red Book, I just refer to it as the latest before he died, in terms of the technique descriptions and the manuals for the stuff. And then the latest one, in the Greenbelt one, he took Skip's stuff and went through a whole bunch of techniques and listed out like 5 swords, the first move and all the principles, the second move and all the principles. All of them start with point of origin. Every technique we starts with point of origin. Now, some techniques we put our hands up, like as to say, hey, what's going on? You know, there's a couple of techniques that actually start with a hands up, because he wanted to do that because that's what the technique point of origin starts from. Anyway, as Skip started doing this, he started recognizing a lot of duplicity from one technique to the other, and started grouping them into 2 terms. One was a master key, and the other was family groupings. The family groupings, I think, came first. Then after that, it was like, okay, well, out of the family groupings, is there a master key move? Is there one, 2, 3 moves that are the same that can be used for several things? For example, in short one, the first move, short one, long one, short 2 and long 2 have no definitions to them. They're not against any particular technique. They can be utilized for a number of things, but say, for example, short one, the first move is just to step back and do an inward strike, or it could be an inward block, depending on what you want. And that could be for a right punch, a left punch, a front push, a high front kick, you know, a spinning back knuckle. It could be used for, you know, numerous things. That the inward block coming in, if you had a left spinning back kick, or not back kick, left spinning back knuckle on the first move of short one, that could be used for that. Anyway, there's you know, you could put your mind to use. Anything coming into that basic zone in there would fit with an inward block or an inward strike. So consequently, out of that, there becomes a master key move that could be used for several different possibilities. Keep in mind also that master keys, there are many master keys. There's not just, I mean, the popular one is the techniques, the one that I had listed, which is not my personal list, actually. That's Skip's list. I just borrowed it from him. So the thing is, that's one list on techniques. However, there's more lists on techniques other than just that one. That's not the master key list, you might say. There's a lot more different ones. You know, there's master key basics, master key drills, master key, you know, all kinds of master keys. You can master key a lot of things. You know, and sort of the same thing with, as Marty would say, with Inosanto, there's certain master key stick maneuvers that are prevalent in a lot of circumstances, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of my concept and workings with that stuff. With that, honestly, I don't dwell on them. It's an interesting topic. Unlike our ex-IKKA buddy that's out there that likes to think he's the master of the master key terminology and everything. So, you know, John seems to think he's the master of the master keys, and he might be somewhat knowledgeable, but, you know, I think it's mostly stuff that he's made up, you know, but that's my genesis, if you will, more so than what that is. And I know, of course, I wasn't in Mr. Parker's pocket every step of the way, so I'm sure, you know, when we took a trip with Lee and Skip to Jersey and to England in '86, we kind of formulated after that the dimensional stages of action. That kind of set off, because there was an article in Black Belt or Karate Illustrated saying that Kenpo was least efficient in close, in what we now determine as the in tight, the in up close range. What's it called, Todd?
Contact manipulation range.
Contact manipulation. You know, right? So, which
Or
obviously we
dead.
know that's crazy, because we're obviously very good at that particular thing. You know, you don't want to get inside Mr. Parker's manipulation phase, otherwise you will be manipulated. You know, so anyway, that was an interesting topic. On the way to England, Lee can I'll ask Lee if he wants to identify with that or confirm it.